Hello, everybody, and welcome to the seventh session of the WiDESIGN Fest 2021, brought to you by your more design school. Excel your career in design by opting in our full-fledged design certification courses and masterclasses. I mean, it's the seventh session. It's been going really well, and for those of you who are wondering why it's still going on, we've decided to kind of extend this amazing fest for a couple of more weeks because there are still a lot of women who are yet to share some of the amazing stories they have in place for you. So that's the reason we're still going on, and it's been really fun. So we're glad to be back again for the seventh time for the WiDesign Fest. So great job to the Yomo team who's been doing a lot of heavy lifting at the backstage. So uh, good job, guys. And I'm back at hosting. This is Rohan. I'm a UX designer. I'm also part of the Yomo design, sort of thing. And I do write a lot and volunteer a lot at Yomo. I've been there since quite a while. It's been crazy, and it's been really amazing to host such amazing people we've had so far. So today, with the mix of talks and one panel discussion, which will be towards the end, we will hear and debate around many topics from some really cool women who are making giant leaps in their careers. If you are excited, share your excitement with us. Comment on wherever you're watching this, YouTube, Facebook, wherever you are. Just comment, and we'd love to hear from you and keep sharing your thoughts. So that's about it from me, and I think it's time we get started with our first talk. Let's get started now. Cool. So So as you just saw in that short clip, we have a great set of people who are going to take stage and talk and share their thoughts and discuss. But to start with, we have Vaishnavi Reddy, who is the founder and CEO of Origin UX, a design agency driven by the love for craft. So today, let's hear her talk about how to take off from day one at a new place of work. Post her talk, we will have the chance to talk to her, interact with her for a quick Q&A session. So post your comments. And Vaishnavi, we are excited to have you, and the stage is all yours.
Hey Rohan, thank you for having me. And so I'll begin without further ado because I'm really excited to be here, and we'll start right away.
Awesome.
So are we set? Let's roll.
Yes, Vaishnavi, you're good to go.
Great. So, hello to everyone who's tuned in today. And I want to talk about the story of my tryst with entrepreneurship and design, and how from day one, hopefully, it can inspire or give cues to a lot of viewers who are seeing today to get started with what you have in mind and to what you've set your heart with. So just a very quick background. I'm a designer, and the whole inclination towards art and design started off from NIF. That's where I did my design graduation from. And post my graduation, I worked in the corporate and apparel brands and digital brands for about 2 years. And that's where I started honing my actual skills, connecting fashion, design thinking, digital. So to speak, it was a very multidisciplinary affair. And then, sort of one day, the entrepreneurship bug bit me, and then I really thought that corporate would not be the right place for me to do what I wanted to do and really flourish my thought process. Because by then, I was in between a trio of fashion, digital, and UX also was booming at that time. And then, yes, when I decided to kind of quit and start up, obviously emotions and self doubts were always on a very high tide. But long story short, with my partner, we started a digital design agency in 2015, and then around 2016, there was a huge boom in user experience as a term, and then my that's where my true entrepreneurship actually took place and it kickstarted. And it's been 5 years and going strong, and having worked with about 300 plus brands, this tryst that's been going on has taught me many things, out of which the first very important thing that I feel is when I decided to do entrepreneurship, even at a peer level, when you see your friends or your co-workers being very secure, having a steady growth and all of that, I really remain loyal to the idea of that I wanted to be an entrepreneur. So definitely loyalty is what it takes, and it's been very rewarding at the end of 6 years. It's given me the freedom to do what I want to do, and at any scale that I want to do. Literally, it has expanded the horizons, although it comes with its own ups and downs, and it has given a lot of challenges and learning. But I still feel at the end of the day, entrepreneurship was the best choice for me. It also has taught me to be very persistent in what I wanted, because with this generation and the amount of choices we have, getting distracted is super easy. Just one click onto an app and you will get distracted. So something that's kept me on track and not really give up, because I think when I started off my entrepreneurship, I was only around 22 years old. So I think with that kind of time and the digital age in which we live and the exposures we have, I think it's really taught me how to be persistent. And thanks to times like Corona and multiple recessions that have come before, it has taught us how to quickly adapt and evolve. And definitely along the way, have focus and clarity and be very specific to see what you want to achieve and where you want to go. Of course, there will be deviations, there will be a lot of hardships, there will be a lot of trials. Some days you may think that being your own boss, or not having a boss is super easy. You don't have to really struggle for asking around things, etc. But I feel that it also brings a lot of immense responsibility, not just upon you, but to your team, to your clients who are working with you. So while the perks of entrepreneurship is definitely freedom, but it also comes in hand with a lot of responsibility. And one thing which I little later into the years I realized is that as creative people, as designers, we will always have this imposter syndrome. We really don't know who we are. It takes a lot of time for us to identify our own voice and give it the real character. But something that I learned, and I'm still learning along the way, is to how to not really limit yourself. Think big, because it really does not cost you anything, but at the same time stay humble to see how you're going to actually achieve it, right? And one thing that I would looking back, what I really reflect as to when I started at 22 to almost 30 where I am now, is that you have to value yourself and know your worth. So the first point here is also, it also resonates the feeling, or represents a lot of freshers who are starting out, a lot of freelancers who are trying to explore their opportunities in design. So how do you then figure out, where do I start? How much do I ask for? What's the value that I put in for my time and effort? So what I would suggest for a lot of viewers today, if you are in that category, is to network a lot, is to speak to mentors, understand where you are, hone your skills, and at the same time know your value and say no to free design. So that's the first point. And the second point that I also learned over a period of years is, when you are an entrepreneur and at a very young age, having financial discipline can be can be extremely rewarding at a later point in time. I must say that all of these pointers or touch points, such as what I'm saying right now, have been taught and have been honed along the way of this journey. So I think if I look back and say what advice would I give to my 22 or 23-year-old self, I think these 2 points were top of the list. And in the same journey, the three pillars that I think is still helping me to leap from where I am to the next, and that also helped me when I started off from day one, was aim at bigger purpose. As designers, have tried, no matter what you are doing today, to obviously make ends meet and get experience and all of that, but have and define a north star, if I can say so, in order to help you guide and track your way, right? The second thing is, as you progress into the design careers, be it either in entrepreneurship or freelance or at work, with every promotion or with every year, I think as much as you evolve with your craft, a certain level of mind shift also has to happen. And one formula that I follow is, whatever I want to achieve, I try to aim at least three times higher than that. So, and I pat myself even if I'm able to achieve just one step, or I'm able to meet that goal somewhere midway, right? So that's mind shift for you. Then the third thing that I feel personally has helped me a lot is to build a very niche skill set, because there are a lot of designers who have a general practice in the early years of their career, which is a great thing. Reason being, you can pick up a niche or you can become an expert once you have probably an idea of how multiple things work, and because that's how multidisciplinary thinking also will help at a later point of time. And having a mentor network helps you immensely, and it helped me immensely in the early years of my career, and it definitely continues to do now also at very different levels. And whenever I feel that what do we do next, right? In times of uncertainties, like even Corona time or the COVID time, or even before, when we were having different types of problems at every stage of my entrepreneurship. So when I started out, I literally, apart from design, I really did not know any nuance of running a business. And then over 2 years, 2 years into entrepreneurship, then questions about how do you actually run a business comes in. Then another 2 years into it, how do you retain a team? Then for then later, how do you manage your finances? How do you scale? How do you tap into new market areas? So at different levels, there have been different challenges that have coming up, and I honestly feel that these are good problems to have. And some of the approaches that have helped me is very clear articulation of what you want, and what is the area. This has also helped us in pulling off massive projects, working with really large teams of like 50, 60 people, managing different clients at the same go. So the key to success, I think, is the very most and important is articulation. How well do you articulate your problem areas? How well do you articulate your solutions? And how do you stitch in the entire narrative together? The second thing that I learned running an agency at a given point is proactive planning, because as designers by core at heart, you I think all of us tend to really get very involved and become very obsessed and like possessive about what we design and what we do. But when you actually flip the coin and see it as a business side of things, then and multiple stakeholders at place, and a lot of uncertain scenarios that you may have to account for, proactive planning, irrespective of how many to-do lists you have to make, please go ahead and do that well. And by intent setting, I mean the kind of intention that you want to set. And this has helped me in multiple ways by drawing out clear boundaries with myself, with my team, with my clients, saying this is what we intend to do. The intent is good, or because as women, it definitely is very important to learn to say no and to learn to say yes. So when you really are actually caught in that turmoil, having very clear intent setting and objective setting, if that's an alternative, that has helped me a lot. And definitely the last one is manifestation. There are numerous anecdotes of different ways in which I've really, looked forward to something, and I have always manifested saying, we should probably be doing that. We have to probably set this as the target. It would be really nice if X Y Z happens. And trust me, I think 99% of the times it has come true. So setting good intents and manifesting and putting in the work for it has helped me get through my entrepreneurship journey so far. And while all of this is happening, I must admit I'm also human, so I have and an introvert, a major introvert. So but when you are a designer, when you are a creative person, it for some reason you are always expected to be the best and the loudest in the room. But unfortunately for me, I'm extreme introvert. But the fundamentals that have kept me going from day one are the values that I hold, the kind of importance I give to self, and definitely the value that I hold for my family. So as an entrepreneur, I feel when all of the checklist that I just shared with you, the approach that I shared with you, if it all comes into cohesion, then I think that's a good journey, and the story will count after a couple of years. So let the tryst continue. I'm open for questions.
Hey Vaishnavi, thanks so much for that amazing talk. Glad to see you've covered so many aspects of your life, not just your entrepreneurial journey. So I think that's a lot of inspiration for a lot of people watching this out there. So we'll
And
jump into great, thanks. So we'll just jump into questions because we just have a couple of minutes before our
yeah.
next session, and so you spoke a lot about intent setting and learning to say yes or no as a woman, right? Could you try and maybe elaborate what you exactly mean by that?
Okay, so naturally, I mean, a lot of it has been said and done about it. That women are naturally multitaskers, and we have a flair of picking up multiple things and doing it phenomenally well. What I specifically mean to understand yes or no is to, and it just and in a sense, it's not just for women. I think generally, but it all the more it becomes important for a woman. A reason being. Um, for long, the stereotype is that women are better at employment because they will continue to work in a certain way, etc. Right? I'm so glad that things have changed. But the reason why I say yes or no is because that gives the confidence to, at least in my way, it gives me the clarity with which I should progress, to be simply put. So I will take projects, or I would say yes to scenarios only when I know that I can handle it well and I can do the job properly. And when there could be multiple reasons for saying no, and the reason being, in a way, you're doing a favor to the other person by clearly letting them know of your intention to them, so that they could probably find an alternative. The reason is that I do not want anybody to be in a situation where they're really having this mixed feelings and not being able to really take a very decisive decision. And taking decisive decisions is very important in entrepreneurship, and that's been my experience so far.
I think that's very well put, Vaishnavi. So I think we have some comments flashing on the screen from
Yeah.
Sharan, which is any tips for coming out of your comfort zone as a designer? Really struggling with that right now. So
Yeah.
does he mean comfort zone as a designer and moving into entrepreneurship? I don't know, but mm, I,
No, I think generally even I've had that, and I continue to see a lot of designers have that at every age, right? Even from being a fresher to 15 years experience to 20 years of experience. The only way that I honestly try to do out of comfort zone is I really put myself in a very difficult situation. So I think in the last 5 6 years, every year I've had a mentor or a client that I have voluntarily signed up, knowing that it's going to be very difficult, and that has that has pushed me and my team to be deliberately take an understanding, because honestly, how much ever you self motivate yourself, unless there is a tight deadline. See, there is no other master than a tight deadline. Okay, that can motivate you as much as you want. So really get out of your comfort zone and sign up for something which is uncomfortable. And if you fake it till you make it, then I think in a couple of months you'll be out of your comfort zone.
Great. So you must have been really motivated to do that. But that's some great advice again. So I think we have time for one quick question, which is from Rajendra, who asked, "What can be done to improve articulation?"
So one thing that we continuously do here, and even when I started off, and I still continue to practice, is we kind of do a lot of like we continue to we try to imitate speeches that we usually see on platforms like TED Talks, or try to read a book very aloud and try to re-paraphrase that. So essentially, in terms of articulation, there could be two stages. If you are really starting from zero, I think trying to imitate speeches, trying to imitate talks. That is one way, so that your articulation style and the narrative gets easier. And the second piece is always you can validate it for yourself in terms of just by speaking to your teammates or your users or your group. Whether they are understanding your points of what you want to express cohesively or non-cohesively. So I think if you are able to do this two in parallel, and first, I think what I try to tell people is structure your thoughts first and then speak, right? Because some people are wired in a way that they're so very excited to say what they want to say, but they try in the process they mince it up. So there could be multiple levels of articulation. So identify where you are and then slowly progress from there.
Great. I hope that answers that question. Uh, that's unfortunately that's all the time we have for now. But thanks so much for being here, Vaishnavi. It's a great
Thanks
talk,
for having
and
me.
I did have a lot of takeaways from that, and I hope you enjoyed yourself too.
Sure, my pleasure. Thanks for having me, Rohan.
Thanks, Vaishnavi. So that's the talk number one wrapped up, and I think it's time we move on to the second talk. And for the next talk, we have Joshna, who's a design lead at Verizon with 11 years of experience across companies like Adobe and Cognizant. She has engaged for innovation design strategy for global IT products. She's also a vivid artist whose work has been showcased in multiple art exhibitions. And today she's here to talk about tidying your CX. We'll also have a quick Q&A session with Joshna post her talk. So keep your questions ready and keep them posting. And Joshna, welcome to you, and the stage is all yours.
Hey, thanks, Rohan. Hi, everyone. I'll just start by sharing my screen.
Yes.
Okay, I hope my screen's visible.
Yes, you're good to go.
Okay. So, hi, everyone. I'm very excited to talk today, and I want to talk about being tidy. And I want to start by asking, why tidy? Why be tidy? And I'm sure when I'm asking this question, some of the things that come in our mind is tidy. We relate to being clean, being neat, declutter, and so on. And while we think that, what also comes to mind, what to tidy? We may think tidying our bed or our desk or even our pantry, and some of us may think tidying our finances. So let's start by understanding what's tidy, what's the definition. Tidy is to bring order to something and arrange neatly. And today, in my presentation, I want to talk about how to tidy your design and bring an order to how we design, and along with design, to our mind as well. And why am I discussing this topic today? Because the process of being tidy helps us be more mindful, introspective, and forward looking. So, before I proceed further, hi everyone. I want to just start by giving a quick introduction about myself. I'm a designer. I work as design lead at Verizon. I'm also an artist. And along with this, I'm a mother, wife, and a daughter too. So, when I say these things to you, what am I communicating? I'm talking about the different roles that I play in my career, in my passion, and in family. And while I'm playing these different roles, surely gets overwhelming. While these are the roles that I play, I know all men and women play these and many more roles as well. And it does get overwhelming, but what I have found it's helpful is to have a humanistic approach to how we play these different roles. So I want to start by sharing a story. I guess my journey about being tidy happened when I became a mother of my daughter Gia, and when I came back to work post maternity, I felt little overwhelmed to juggle. I'm using the word juggle here, to juggle career and family and somewhere passion as well. And while this was not just my journey, it was also the journey of my husband as we share parental duties. And it led to my quest to simplify life. And in my quest, I stumbled upon Corn Mary method. It's by Marie Kondo. She's very famous. I'm sure most of you have heard about her. She's written many books, and she primarily focuses on the Japanese art of decluttering and organizing. So this is a little fan moment for me because I think her work has really inspired me here, and today's talk is also inspired from her principles. So while I applied KonMari method, it took me almost 2 to 3 months to apply in the house. And when I say that, yes, in the entire house. And while my journey started by applying this in the house, I started being more mindful, introspective, and forward looking. Life is all about relearning, and this happened to me all again because my priorities were also changing. And these principles I felt also very much apply to the way we design. And the same principles to bring order in our mind is equally important as we juggle the different roles that we play. So let's look into different the basic rules of tidying up. There's 7 rules, and I'll just lead you through it. Rule number 1, commit yourself to tidying up. I guess every journey starts through a commitment. If we are committed, it's easier to sail through and face the challenges. Whether it's for home, where you commit to go through the process and the energy it takes, whether it's design, where we commit ourselves to work for better design and experience for a customer, despite the complex organizational structures, different team, the processes, and different ownership sometimes around the product as well. Even in our mind, if we are committed to have how to cater to the different roles that we play every day in our life, our commitment helps us sail through it. I want to give an example. So I had my daughter pre-COVID time. She's 4 years now. But there are a lot of mothers who return to work in COVID, and their journey isn't easy. They do not have daycare or other caregiving facilities which were earlier in the pre-COVID times. So, but what keeps them going? It's their commitment to their career that keeps them going through the journey. I'll move to next rule. Rule number 2. Before you start, visualize your destination. We just heard Vaishnavi talking about the North Star here. So So when it comes to home, visualizing about your lifestyle, right? That talks about how you want your home to be. But when it comes to design, visualizing the experience, how the product should be or the design should be. We have the whole discovery process, and we have a lot of techniques like brainstorming. We do competitor studies, industry trends. We also do analysis and audit of current experiences and all. Why do we do all this? To primarily define the business goal and where should we aim through after we finish the design. And the same is very relevant when it comes to mind, and especially the different roles that we all play every day. Whether it's your career, what is the goal of career? That intense setting or creating that career goal is very important to keep us on the journey. It also happens for family. For example, family vacations, family meal times. Aiming for these things helps us more in the journey and how we keep together. I'll move to the next rule, rule number 3, which is tidy by category and not by location. So we need to understand this rule as well. So if we look into Mary principles, what she essentially says, tidy by categories, and she has a categories that she proposes, which is clothes, books, papers, kimono, which is miscellaneous items, and sentimental items. And what does these categories primarily suggest? It's where we move from simpler to more complex categories in terms of the value, which is functional, informational, emotional, and rarity. Now, if we look into home, and if I give an example, she let's talk about the category of clothes. So here she also emphasizes on category and not on locations. So if we tidy up only our cupboard, there are clothes many places around the house, not just a cupboard, a bed box, suitcases, and many other places. But if we look into the category of clothes and we look into tidying up clothes everywhere in the house, we ensure the cupboard doesn't get untidy again, or we do not return to this category again. The same also happens in design. When we look things into category and into the value it add, this is also about the discovery process in design. We when we are doing the discovery process, we surely move in an order where we define the functional aspect of task flows or the overall architecture of the feature or the product, and slowly we move by adding more information through low fidelity and high fidelity mockups, and then eventually adding the personalization aspect to make it emotionally connect to our customers. And then eventually, when they all work together in a good manner, we do end up creating a unique experience which helps us set apart from our competitors. So here, it's also about look at the category, not at a location. In design, it's not looking into a screen or a specific area, but looking at the category and going through the process. Now, what categories mean when it comes to mind? So the goals that we set for a career or family or whatever role we play, if can how about coming into categories from them, and again starting from simpler category to more complex. So for example, category in career is something like, say, like let's look into the functional goals. What are the activities that we need to do daily or in order to function in the current role that I am in, or in my team, or in the organization, or the domain, or with the or while socializing. What are these categories? What is the information needed as we grow in our roles? And then how do we make it emotional, which is primarily our milestones that we set for us in the journey. I'll move to the next rule. Ask yourself if it sparks joy. A very deep question which we all connect. Like looking into a cupboard and seeing clothes that spark joy, which give you confidence, which make you feel more positive about your body. When we look into design, look asking the question, the experience we deliver, does it spark joy for our customer? Is there joyous moments? And in focusing on them, the intent of asking the question is realize what can give joy to the customer and creating a focus about them. Similarly, it happens for a mind, or I will take the example of a career goals, or what sparks joy for us. What are those things that can mean joy? So this also means that there's a lot of introspection here, where you connect with yourself and you realize what matters to us, and which gives us the purpose to focus on as well. Moving to the next rule, give everything a home. So, what's a home? Home is a place to return, to find something. It's a comfortable place. So, if, for me, as an artist, I feel having my stationery and all my art supplies at one place where I can go for, and when I keep all the things together, it surely gives me a lot of joy, because it helps, make me think about how I can experiment more on creative side. In design, having a home for a product, or for a product feature, makes a huge difference for the customer to use. They know where to go for. That's where a lot of navigational elements come into the picture as well. And when the customer even gets used to one product, this is even important when we look into product family, and that's why we'll talk a lot about unification and consistency. uh, Giving a home to, when I say in the mind, it reflects in terms of an action plan as well. So we all have a lot of goals. We have come up with the categories, and what we need to focus, what matters to us. But how does it get started? Primarily when we give a home or give a place any action plan, it has to be daily, weekly, monthly, and yearly. And even many times when we forget something, it's a plan that reminds us, oh, we need to do that. That's where we are more in order, and things are less chaotic. I'll move to the next rule: organizing techniques. In her Through Marie Kondo's principle, she talks about a lot of techniques about tidying the home, which is also about folding clothes, arranging the use of baskets, arranging items in vertical orientation, and so forth. And why is it important? Because it makes it efficient and productive. And now, when we look into design, we have a design process. That there are a lot of techniques in each design phase. And understanding these techniques is very important. That's where we learn about a craft, which makes us more skillful. And also even adapting to newer techniques like sprint planning, and which makes where we apply the entire process, and which makes them more productive. So understanding the techniques and even tools, I will say, especially in COVID time, where we have tools like Figma, which help us be more collaborative. That's the ask of how we adapt to a situation. Knowing our techniques and tools is critical when we design. So that's something that's there. Techniques are also important to how we plan, and we bring clarity in our mind for the different roles that we play. A lot of people, I personally like diary entry. People like note taking, calendar planning, there's a folder structure, and there are much more. They can be any tools. But knowing the technique that works for you in order to plan, track, and even reflect surely helps to have a clear state of mind and more focused. I'll move to the next rule: discard with gratitude. This is my favorite, where we learn about gratitude. How does it apply for home? So now we have learned what gives us joy, what we want to keep. But there are a lot of things, while what we choose to keep, we are discarding. Discarding an unused pair of clothing. And if we do it with gratitude, we think about the learning, that how it helped us teach that particular style didn't work for us. Or a used clothing also talks about the importance it served in our life and how it can add value to us, something similar. So gratitude helps in, gratitude talks about the learnings that we have in the journey. And there's also learning in letting go of things that don't matter to us. This is very much applicable in design as well. Something very important in design is prioritization of features, of the ideas that we have had from brainstorming. And while we choose some set of ideas, there are a lot of ideas that we are not choosing. And while we do not choose these ideas, there is gratitude, because those ideas have helped us realize what's important for the customer, and there is a learning about it. User feedback in design, there's a lot of learning in that. We learn what's important for the customer, and we also learn about their behaviors and need, and we learn why something, what's creating confusion, and that's something to discard. So while we discard any feature or some flows or something on a design that doesn't work for customer, there is a learning, and hence gratitude. When we think, if I connect back to our minds, uh, and when we look into gratitude about some, I'll say, difficult situations, negative thoughts, or even some failures, and if we look into gratitude, which means we're looking at the learnings we have had in the journey. And it also talks about, when we look into learnings, we look into opportunities, and these opportunities are helping us stay focused. So gratitude is surely is a lot of learnings. So we've covered 7 rules, and I just want to summarize that how to apply these rules in our journey to stay tidy on the design and the mind. So we always start with commitment to stay focused for a design, commitment to stay focused for a career goal, uh, thinking about visualizing our goals, our design vision, looking into categories and not by specific screen, or not by something random. Look into categories and move into simpler to complex. Asking the essential question: what sparks joy for the customer? What sparks joy for us? And focusing on the same, giving everything a home or a place for customer to go, and also creating an action plan for us, equipping ourselves with our techniques and tools that enable us to do what we want to do. And lastly, gratitude and learnings as we go through the journey, because that creates a lot of opportunities. So, while I've talked about the rules that help us stay tidy in at home or even in design that we do, and even how do we stay tidy in our mind in different roles that I play, I want to ask you: did the design that you deliver last? Did it spark joy for the customer? Or look into your in your day to day or this week that's gone by. Did it spark joy for you? And if you're still thinking and you're not sure, maybe there's scope for you to tidy up. So I want to say arigato. Okay, this is a little tongue twisting. This is arigato, which in Japanese means thank you. Thank you for your time. And I'll be happy to connect on LinkedIn. Any questions, please?
Hey, Joshna, thanks for that amazing talk. It was great to see how you were able to, draw parallels with these principles to what goes on in everyday life. That was amazing. So I think we are a bit short of time, so let's jump into questions. Firstly, I'm super curious. How did this idea of tidying up even come up? Like, what was your inspiration? I understand there was a lot of Japanese philosophy which went into it, but what was your inspiration there?
Well, I've often heard women have superpowers, and I felt overwhelmed and burdened with that concept. And I felt it didn't work, because even though I have superpowers, it was overwhelming for me. And while it was, I believe in gender equality, and while it's not overwhelming for me, it's so equally overwhelming for my husband. And I've seen many others sail through the same journey. So so what's the humanistic approach, and how do other people manage? So I was in my journey, and this thing largely happened, and I realized that it's all about bringing an order, and we have to work towards it. It doesn't happen by default.
Great. So, do you usually, I mean, I understand you're a UX designer yourself, so do you usually relate to a lot of Japanese designs in your inspiration? How's that like?
Yes, I do relate. I think there was a time when I was going towards minimalism. My designs were getting very minimalistic in terms of the information it has and the elements. I just feel this philosophy was a little relieving with me because it is not about depriving ourselves, but it is about working that brings joy for us and focusing on the same way in the design as well. So, but back to your question, there is a lot of deep philosophy in, in the Japanese sayings.
Absolutely, I'm as amazed as probably you are with those Japanese principles and the kind of technology and the way their life goes on. So we do have, I think, time for one last question from Dhanushri, who asks, "How do we aspire and motivate people around us to be as tidy as we are?"
Um, well, well, I think it's a process, Dhanashri. I think you have to design what you're you have to decide what you're tidying up, right? What is your tidy definition? And what do you want to tidy? Do you want to tidy your home, your career, and while and while these are different roles that you want to tidy, what is your goals in it? Set those goals, go through the process. I think that works. Be the inspiration. If you follow, I think, and you share a lot of positivity, it does happen. But I will go back to the process, and the journey starts by looking into what you want to bring in order, and and then going through it.
Great. I think that was a great answer and a great session overall. Thank you so much, Joshna, for being here. Your talk was amazing, and the audience definitely seemed to have liked it. So thanks again for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yes. So we're down with two sessions, and we have two more to go before we jump into our panel. So let's get going. I think it's going super interesting as of now. So let's see what other speakers have in store for us. I'm sure it's going to be as amazing as the previous speakers were. So to come in next, we have Vaishali Kalra. She's a brand designer and strategist.
Hello, everyone. I'm Vaishali,
Hey,
and hi, Raman. Thank
hey
you for having me
Vaishali.
here.
Thank you. So you're currently working at Get Vital, if I'm not wrong, and
Yes,
today you're going to be
yes,
talking about how not to position yourself while applying for a job. Is that right?
yes, yes.
Amazing. So we are
So,
excited to have you on board, and of course there will be a Q&A session, Vaishali, after this. So
sure,
I'll just remind the audience to post in their questions.
sure. Thanks,
Yeah,
Rohan.
and
Uh,
I think you're good to go. And welcome again.
Thank you, Rohan. So, hello, everyone. I'm Vaishali, and I work for a startup called Get Vital, wherein we're trying to disrupt how health insurance industry works in India. Apart from that, I have worked across different areas of design, from print to digital to curation. And there are a few things that I learned, and while I've been applying to different jobs myself, there are a few insights that nobody teaches us. And we don't even realize those uh, points that that might come and hinder, that we don't hinder our way of applying and positioning ourselves. I think there are we don't as designers, sometimes we forget that we ourselves are also a brand. We forget about branding ourselves personally while putting out ourselves in the market. We forget how do we sell ourselves in the market. And so here are a few things that I thought, I collected few insights that I collected, that I should not position, or any designer should not position themselves while they're applying. uh, Too creative to care about the impact of your role on the business. When we are applying, we don't, or even when we start working, we don't realize that what role we're playing in part of the business. I mean, our salaries are dependent on, because are possible because of that business. We get too creative to. I mean, I know we shout on our bosses that they don't understand, they're not creative enough, they don't understand our creative powers, they don't, but they pull us down. And we have all seen those memes where what client wants, what client does not want, and what they really expect and what we do. But I think we do have to figure out a middle ground where you know, we balance our creativeness and the impact that it creates on the business. I mean, we all know customers are if it sells in the market, it is your problem is solved. I mean, there's no other solution. If you solve the problem with that bad design that you think you've done, but it's selling in the market, you have a win-win situation. I mean, these are few things that we don't consider. Second is to creative to care about what we wear to work. I mean, there's a huge difference when we go out there, and there shouldn't be. I mean, as designers, we can be creative in our clothing. We can be creative in our what we, uh, go there, and I mean, it becomes difficult for the your company or your boss to make you stand in a client meeting sometimes. So be careful about those things. We get too creative and not read the newspaper. One of the biggest things that we don't see what's happening. We don't. There is a reason why your solutions sometimes come from the problems that are happening around us. So that's one of the insights that I figured it out. The third one is too creative to care about the ROI or the feasibility of your idea. I mean, when we are positioning ourselves or putting out there, we need to figure out if this recently happened with me. I mean, I was talking to somebody, and I had an idea, but I didn't have a set plan. So, this struck me when that if I don't have a plan, my idea will always will be an idea. I can't you know I can't take it forward. So always have a plan. Always have an idea with a plan. We don't care as designers. Sometimes we do miss out on data, numbers, and stats. We do not. We take this as like, okay, we are designers. We don't need to care about data, numbers, and stats. But I think those are really important in the digital world that we live in. I mean, use it for your benefit. Try and figure out how you know what impressions you're getting, what kind of people are liking. I think Instagram has changed that things a lot. Then the last is to always with that in conclusion, always see what business you're applying, what company you're applying, what are their strategies, do they align, do your thoughts align to their thoughts, do your values or the way you think, are they aligned? Don't go just to apply and get a job. I mean, always apply it, always think about that. Do your values always match with their, do your creative level works with them, do they have the same thoughts, do they understand what you're talking about when you're interviewing with them? I mean, ask about their goals. Do you think you can grow there, you can scale up there? Always look up to that. Like, I mean, I always try to look up where I can build things from scratch. That's what is challenging for me, where I get more freedom to do it. I mean, figure that out for yourself, and always ask them, what are their goals, how do they plan to, like, if they can ask you what are your 5-year plan, you can ask them what are their 5-year plan. I mean, that's how you will grow and understand that you can stand up there with them, and your creative will help them grow their business. So that's what I think. And now when I say this, these were the things that you should not position yourself while applying for a job. The things that you should take care while applying for the job. Build your personal brand in a way that your resume should spark that out, that you are a product by yourself. We all love there are products that we all will love in the market that just strike our uh, you know this is the brand that we love to go. Or when we think about buying instant noodles, we always instantly go and buy Maggie. For any kind of noodles or any brand, we call every brand Maggie. But that's because they have positioned and stored that picture in your head. Have that kind of a picture in your head when you are going out to people, applying for different companies, talking to people. Leave that impression on them. So that was my key. That's my insights on how one should, be a brand by itself. And I'm open to questions, and you can connect with me on LinkedIn. Rohan, I think we can have people.
Hey Vaishali, yes, thanks for the talk firstly. And some people were asking if you are sharing a screen. No, she was not. So that's out of the way. Uh, so Vaishali, I think it's a great talk all in all, and I think you spoke about some very key aspects of building a brand and looking for a job, right? And one of the questions I have for you is, when you interview with a company, of course the company is going to talk about what they are, and I'm this, and this is our goal, and this is what we want to hit, and whatever they want to say. How do you try and gauge the company by looking beyond what they're feeding you?
So I personally I personally go read about I research about every angle that company holds, like whether it's their website or any press release that has come about them, their social media handles, their or sometimes I just go around, see people who work at certain companies on LinkedIn, people who work at that company on LinkedIn, so that you understand that trend, what kind of people, what background they're coming from, what is the team that you're applying, the department you're applying for. This could be for anything. The department you are applying from, like it's a design background. What are the other designers who are already there in that company, where they come from? What have they done made in the recent time that have changed, has brought a change in the industry or change in the world, solving a problem.
God, I think that makes perfect sense, and I think that should be a sort of a standard approach, right? Before you join into any company, you should try and look them up to see what they're up to and what they've been doing. So one other aspect which I wanted to talk about is, you spoke about building a brand for yourself, right? And
Yes.
these days, I mean, this is my personal opinion here, but I've read a lot of articles or a lot of content on how describing yourself in a couple of lines completely gives away what you are as a brand, which is a good thing. So, any tips on that, or do you think that is a right approach? Or
I think we all need to first understand. I think in that whole area of, I mean, the competition is too high that we sometimes just forget that who we are and what kind of a designer we are. We all forget that. People start copying work, people start doing a lot of things, but we forget who we are and what our values are. Like what you think design is. Like for me, design is not about cosmetics or making good posts or good emailers, good graphic design. That's not design for me. If you can't solve a problem uh, from with a design solution, I mean, you need to solve a problem. That's design. Like
correct,
that's what I tell everyone, that everybody around you will be a bias in the business, but a designer will never be a bias, because that person thinks from each and every aspect of how a solution should come out. That the designer will think from marketing perspective, the person will think of from building a business model, customer experience, aesthetics of that product, everything. So nobody, you're not biased. So why are you being biased with yourself? Sell yourself as a brand who you are. Don't be
correct. I
biased
think
and don't mold yourself.
correct. I think that's a great advice for people watching this. So I think we have time for one last question from Sharan,
Sure.
who asks, "What kind of questions can you ask a company during an interview to assess their design maturity?"
I mean, the biggest thing that I have come up, there are few things that I always think about are, if they ask you what are your 5-year plan, why can't you ask them what are their 5-year plan? And ask them about how your design team works and what are the roles that, how it is spread, how tight are the deadlines, what is the process. Every company has a different process of going through. I mean, so every people follow sprints, people don't follow sprints. I mean, I'm working in a situation where I need to come up with ideas or even produce and get it into production within one day. So, I mean, that depends on what actually the situation is, right? So here where I'm working for a startup. So I know I have to grow. I have to reiterate every day. I cannot afford to not reiterate every day. So I'm growing every day. I'm seeing feedback coming in every day. So I have to change every day. So I mean, ask such questions wherein you think that will hinder your growth in the company, or how can you scale up in the company?
Got it. I think that makes perfect sense. Absolutely. So I think that's all the time we have for questions. Vaishali, thanks so much again for being here.
Thank
It
you
was
for
a great
having me.
session. And I think there are some more questions which went unanswered, but sorry, that's all the time we have. Thanks again,
Thanks.
Vaishali. Yes, we just wrapped up Vaishali's talk, and it was pretty amazing the way she articulated some of her thoughts. That was our third talk, and we have one final talk before we jump into our panel. So let's get started with that. Um, so we have next speaker is Kranti Vanjari, who's a UX design lead at WNS Global Services. Today, she's here to talk about empathy in digital world, how to build more compassionate empathy in an era which is moving towards digitalization, isolation, and physical distancing. As usual, we're also going to have a Q&A session with her. So stay tuned and post your questions, and we'll soon start the panel after Kranti's talk. Kranti, you have the stage.
Thank you, Rohan, for the introduction. I'll just share my screen.
Yeah.
Yeah. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is now. You're on.
Okay, great. So good evening, everyone. I am Kranti, and I'm going to talk about empathy in digital world. Well, it is a very vast topic. There's a lot can be spoken, a lot of theories can be built around it. What I'm going to bring in over here are going to be little disturbing and little stirring kind of point of view. But I have tried my level best to touch upon some critical issues and some important points. To start with, what is empathy? So, as the definition goes, it is something to see from someone else's eyes, listen from someone else's ears, or feel from someone else's heart. Scientifically, there are almost like 8 identified empathies. And what I'm going to really talk about is how empathy can be in digital interfaces or in digital world, and how to really deal with it. Why is it important? By the fact that it's a very much human competency. It's basically a kind of a neurobiological formation that takes place in our minds, in our bodies, when we see someone in pain. So there's some sort of an emotional mirroring which kind of takes place, and it might trigger us to help that person whoever is in some problem area. It affects a lot of our emotional well-being, our relationships. So in a nutshell, it's basically empathy is important because it makes humans more human. So back in 2013, there was a popular speech made by Barack Obama where he said that there is an empathy deficit, and he said that it's really a serious issue more than even a federal budget deficit. What he was trying to say that more and more our society and the community that we live into seems completely naive to believe that we can understand the geographical differences or any sort of differences that exist in our human race. So it could be by class, by religion or region, or any sort of race. So that was quite of a political buzz in those days, and let's see whether it's really a fact. So what statistics say, and certain sort of studies that came up recently, was that there is definitely a slowdown in empathy or a decrease in empathy. So one of the study was carried out by University of Michigan, wherein they studied college students. So back in 2010, so that means these folks would be millennials. So what they found was that 40% decrease in empathic capabilities were observed in these kind of students, which was triggered, or the possible reasons to it was given that, these are the folks who got exposed to a lot of technology in their student daily life. They were exposed to a lot of cyberbullying or the Facebook envy that we look into. So the graph, what you see is a graphical representation of this study. There's a probability curve that I have tried to draw. We are here, we are in middle of a major pandemic, wherein forget about physical, getting in touch with someone face to face. We are socially distancing from people, and there's this going to move on towards being more isolated and towards being more secluded from social relationships. So is technology really to blame for this? Is it really responsible? So there is this global risk report which is released every year by World Economic Forum. And back in 2019, some sort of stir or some sort of PR this particular report created, because it clearly stated that yes, definitely levels of empathy had fallen in a couple of decades. It has been observed that most of the global employees most of the people are feeling resentful. They are acting very unhappy because of the whole automation of work environment. There was also a very interesting point which was put across in this report, that there are going to be more and more mental disorders which our civilization is going to face, and which in turn is going to impact us in terms of productivity, in terms of the economic aspect, that trillions of dollars are going to basically affect because of this. So it's a scary moment. It is something reminds me of this painting of Edward Munch, when back in 1893, he came up with this painting because he felt that moment of anxiety, of that moment of claustrophobia and anxiousness, that that kind of made him, draw this particular famous painting. And I just imagine, if this painter was today and was watching someone with a constant binge with a mobile phone, he would have drew the same painting again. So let's imagine it's somewhere down 2015, and we have created billions and tons of digital products. Well, we have created all of that without empathy, which means no affection, no bonding, no humane. These products have got created without really understanding human needs. So what I mean by tacit humanly needs is something like, we might understand, okay, what are their usability requirements, what are their needs and motivation, but we may not have deep dived into the emotional requirements of being human, and that's the reason we have created probably a lot of waste. So I have a hypothesis. So hypothesis is that probably billions of dollars will get wasted just for being, ambitious of being digital. I mean, trust me, guys, I have seen corporates, I've seen brands who have, certain kind of humanly service offerings, but still their business goals are newly getting developed around digital. So what the new time CEOs are saying that, okay, we will get maximum revenue from digital products. So that gives me a sense, okay, there's definitely a huge spiking trend towards, many digital products would be there around our lifestyles. We'll be surrounded with a lot of digitizations, and we see that trend, right? I mean, today, Google App Store has so many, like millions of apps, and it's going to double in a decade. So what we jokingly call in UX language is like, if you find any sort of a problem, you just slap an interface. I mean, it's just that interface is kind of put across over there without really consciously thinking whether a human really required it or not. So let's understand, like after this hypothesis, I just want to take you back about what is really being empathetic. So in my opinion, being empathetic is highly complex, yet it's doable. And definitely as women, we are better off because there's some sort of scientific studies. What you can see in the right side is a graph. There are lot many, by the way, scientific studies which suggested that humans have a better way of or a much higher tendency of empathizing than other gender. But if we study the kind of our typical brain, any human brain, we have this frontal cortex, which is more responsible about thinking or making conscious decisions. And in that frontal cortex is where empathy lies. So what I'm trying to say is basically empathy can be developed if it is consciously practiced. The way we take conscious decisions, the way we take conscious control over our emotions. Similarly, we can consciously develop empathy in whatever we are doing. So let's understand what could be these different levels of empathy. So in my first slide, I kind of spoke about 8 different types of empathies. That's a different vast topic to talk about, but I'll just kind of take you through what are these 3 levels of empathy. So the first 2, what you see is the cognitive and the emotional part. If you'll see the current design practices in the industry, we definitely practice these first 2 levels, which means, if you're practicing ethnography, if you're doing user interviews, if you're observing users in their current environment, in their natural environment, if you're doing a lot of usability testing by asking them to get into certain scenario and then, probably carrying out surveys about how they're feeling towards that interface, we are definitely practicing a fair amount of empathy. But in my opinion, that's not enough as we move on. And that is the stage, which is about more deep diving into human needs. It's about practicing compassion, empathy, which is highly underrated. And there are reasons to it. A couple of reasons could be that corporates or the money lending, big bosses, they are not willing to give the enough time and investment which is required into compassion, empathy. There's also a lot more emotional kind of a challenging role a designer will have to go through when he or she has to practice compassion, empathy. I'll cover up this point of view in my later slides, but to just spark you on this particular point of view. So, most of us, whoever in the audiences is designers, would have come across this kind of empathy card, right? We try to understand, okay, who is this user persona? What is he seeing, hearing, thinking, and feeling? What is he doing? And we document it and we present our insights. So again, the question is, will this be enough? And that gives me another question: that what is really our goal as designers? So is our goal to, build empathy for people to feel? Is our goal to build empathy for people to act or change their behavior? Well, there is no right or wrong answers. I would say both is important. But look at this interface on your left side. It's beautiful neomorphism interface. You look at it, you feel so wow, and it's evoking that feeling of wow and beauty and a lot more of that sort. And on the right side, you see this example of Fitbit. I would really like to hear from the audience, whoever has used this particular application. They have done fairly good job in terms of, gamifying their interface or adding these kind of trigger points of motivating users to get physically active. And when you do that, there are certain sort of badges that you collect. And the kind of tone of language they're using, it's pretty conversational. It's kind of having that quirkiness. It's kind of having that sort of, that conversation that they can have to your probably sarcasm, what we will always talk about when we are discussing fitness, physical fitness. So it's, this is the best example I could think about, when it is about, having design which can make you act or change behavior. But in my opinion, the unavoidable goal for designers is going to be to practice compassionate empathy, and it's going to become more and more vital into the digitized future. Now, I have not really covered up the whole, picturization of how digital world will act upon. I think there's many discussions out there. You will see a lot of sci-fi movies. You will see a lot of talks, TED Talks, wherein people are talking about digitization. What I'm really talking about here is, a lot of digital products around you, which are distracting you, which are probably separating you from human relationships. And in conclusion, they are basically taking you away from your natural tendency of being empathetic. So let's understand then what is it to do? That is it like just to step into someone else's shoes? To an extent, yes, but is it simple? I don't think so. I've practiced user research for 6 years, and now I'm working into UX design and working into design interfaces for AI and machine learning, where people don't really need to think much. To step into someone else's shoes is a lot more difficult and emotionally demanding, because it basically means that you have to lose yourself. First of all, you have to first of all remove your own shoes. So you could be wearing a shoe of a designer, of a CEO, of a god knows what designation you are into. And if you remove that, and that is when the process will begin. To some extent, yes, it is definitely stepping into someone else's shoes. So if I have to talk about then, the compassionate empathy, so where it has to be, like what it really means and how can someone really start doing it? There is certain sort of framework around it. Maybe there could be a different talk to talk about that framework, but I could just right now, talk about that, where to start. So there's a wonderful quote by Dalai Lama, and he's the guy who keeps on talking about peace and compassion. So what he beautifully says that, if you have to really start being compassionate to others, it basically means that you have to start looking within yourself. You have to start being self-compassionate. So, and this again is a question or an open thought to the design fellows who are there in the audience, that are we really being self-empathetic, first of all? Are we really being self-compassionate, first of all? So that question, basically what I'm underlying over here is that, can we unlock the whole binge or the constant gratification we as humans, first of all, go into? And again, this question to designers and then humans, are we really, doing that? Because I a lot more see my design friends there constantly hooked onto social media, constantly there looking for constant gratification on that Behance, on that Pinterest profile, and so on. I mean, it's at a basic level question is, yes, social media is there, is to connect with others, but it's not to connect yourself with social media. It's not that involvement, right? So then what is that goal? If, okay, we practice self-empathy, we probably unlock ourselves through binge and the gratification for the self. But what is that goal that we want to achieve by practicing compassionate empathy? One way to look at it is emotional agility and designing for emotions. So how do I put it? So it's basically when you start designing interfaces, we have to respect the fact that these users are humans and they are going to err. So to err is human, if you go by definition. So if there are going to be errors, how can we compassionately show into our interfaces by designing around those error type of emotions? Okay, so it's basically giving that relaxing moment to your user that yes, it's okay to be tired or guilty, and yes, you have made a mistake, but not to worry, you can correct yourself by following XYZ. And that's where probably even my next thought is that it's also about accepting a lot of humanness into that whole digitized world. Now, let me try to explain this point of view from an example. So we all are working from home. I'm also working from home. And if there is any technical issue with my machine, so my organization has a chatbot, a WhatsApp chatbot. So what I need to do is I just need to say hi to him, to that chat space. And then they will start asking me questions, and I keep giving options, and then they will provide me solutions. But if it still doesn't work, my problem is not solved, then a human basically enters into that chat saying that, hi, I'm Anil, I'm an IT guy, and I'm here to help you. It just gives a lot of relief for me, being work from home, being a human, that, okay, I'm into some sort of a productivity delay issue, and the chatbot is not helping me. But yes, there is a human who has come into that chat and who is going to help me now. So it just kind of relaxes me a lot. So by that example, what I mean to say is, it's not really required to have bots everywhere or to have that digitization everywhere. I mean, there's a beautiful human intelligence designed by nature. Let's continue to have that. It could be a balanced way, like, it could be humans plus bot. It is like, it's not completely digitized world, it's a human plus digital world, is what the message is. And also, and I think this is something which we might be already doing it consciously or subconsciously, or we are already taking a lot of fun in this, is to basically humanizing the interfaces. So, as I said in my earlier thought process as well, that when we are saying that we are moving towards digital world, it basically means that we might be becoming more and more lonely. So how about, the interface that we design is given a certain sort of character, and it's given some sort of an humanized aspect to the conversation or the instructions that it is giving to us. Trust me, it's going to help us feel much better that there is some sort of an humanly connection that we're having on that interface. Now, at this point of time, maybe this is like the three strong points that I have put across. Maybe this is not the only thing. Maybe there could be many other ways to get that compassionate empathy and start designing more from the humanness aspect of the user. But to conclude with, there's a beautiful quote, and this I came across recently. I think a couple of months back. There's one blog on Medium by Oveta Sampson, and the title of the blog was very disturbing. She said that stop bastardizing design by false empathy. You could just Google this particular title and you will see this wonderful talk. But what really hit me in her blog was that, maybe empathy is not just enough to walk into someone else's shoe. It's a lot to do about, taking your own shoes off. It's a lot to, take that journey. I mean, trust me, I had experiences. I have been into the market, I have done user research, I'm doing field research, I come back to the boardroom and throwing insights to the business leaders, and they don't believe in me. They don't really respect the human value I'm trying to bring in through my insights. And that is the moment I always used to feel, okay, can I take this guy to the market and show him that what his user really needs? And but it's a lot more difficult, right? He could be CEO, he could be a business leader, and it would be so difficult for him to really let go of himself, let go of those tags and designations. But that is what eventually we might need to do. We might need to really let go of our strong titles, completely lose ourselves and get into the environment of the user, feel for him, experience the scenarios, and then, start designing for the lot more humanness aspect of it. So that's the quote that I would like to conclude with. And yeah, over to you, Rohan, to discuss further more questions.
Hey, Kranti, thank you so much for that amazing talk. It was filled with great insights, and I think I seem to agree on a lot of the points
Thank you.
you've thrown out there. I mean, I think it's very common these days where people are just using something like empathy as just a small tool, right? You
Yeah.
got to follow the process. You just put an empathy map and build your portfolio. But
Yeah.
nevertheless, I think we are a bit out of time, so I'll probably just we'll do one question,
Sure.
and and I think we've clearly established through your presentation that lack of empathy is eventually going to lead to bad design, right? And you mentioned an example of BMW where they just slap interfaces, uh,
Mhm.
and just to kind of maybe it's a gimmick or whatever. So uh, do you think such a huge company like BMW, who sells so many cars and does so much marketing, can
Mhm.
just do something like that without actually empathizing with your users? And
Mhm.
maybe slapping an interface is what users want. So, how do you basically take that?
Right. So BMW is a classical example, and that's the reason I brought it into my presentation. So typically, automobile industry is where where there's a lot of peer pressure. So if and especially for BMW, if Mercedes is doing it, then yes, BMW has to also do it. And then it also becomes like the whole corporate industry works in a format that okay, the boss has said it, so I have to follow, and if I have to follow, my subordinates have to follow, and my subordinate has to follow, my design has to follow. And so it's more like a followership culture that, this whole corporate people work upon. And it happens so consciously or subconsciously, maybe. So I will not, like, I'm not really criticizing that, what BMW did, but was it really required? Because how difficult it is for you to just walk up to your car and open the car door. And okay, you could have digital locks, you could have, lot more security around your car and everything. But just to push that button and open your car door, do you really need an app over there? And that's the reason the question, why do you slap that interface just for the heck of it?
Okay.
Yeah.
I think we're getting into some really interesting conversation, but I would like definitely want to ask a lot of follow-up questions, but maybe some other time. But we're running short of time right now. But thanks again for being here, Kranti. And there are some questions being posted on YouTube. If you have the time, please do answer to them. But thanks again for being here.
Thank you. Thanks a lot.
Are you a student wanting to explore the world of UX? We got just the thing for you. At UMO Design School, you will be introduced to a strong curriculum designed by the best design mentors around the world. Pick your course today and start exploring the world of UX.
Yes, this is, of course, this whole WiDESIGN session is brought to you by UMO Design School, because our primary mission and goal with this fest was to reach nearly 1 million women and, teach them design and, through our UMO Design School. And we're offering a lot of scholarships to that extent. So do check out UMO Design School, umodesign.school for more info. Before we jump into the panel, I think we spoke about why we've extended the WiDESIGN Fest for so long, but this is going to be the last session. It is our 7th session in this sort of a format. Of course, there's going to be a lot more coming up at UMO Design, so stay tuned for that. Do follow our newsletter and social media for more info. But some exciting news for people who have been following the WiDESIGN Fest. On 24th of April, we're going to have a workshop by speaker Stella Guan, who's the founder and CEO of Path Unbound, and she's going to talk about the secret sauce to building an unforgettable design portfolio. So it's a workshop. It's going to be really amazing, and do check that out. And now it's time for, I think, something we've been all waiting for after such an amazing session of great talks. We'll jump into our panel. And I think we have some very crucial questions to ask ourselves and ask the panel. And I'm sure you're going to have questions as well. So do keep them posting on YouTube Live or wherever you're watching it. We'll pick it up as we go along. And it is Women's Day, and the Women's Month is an opportunity for us to celebrate some amazing stuff which women are doing out there. So we're going to talk about some of those aspects of but let's get started now. Let's jump into our panel, and let me start by making some really quick introductions, because I want to keep most of our time for answering some questions. So firstly, let me start with Shweta. Shweta is a design lead at Deloitte Digital. She's also a published author with many papers to her name. So please welcome Shweta Rashinkar. Hey Shweta, nice to have you on board. The next panelist we have is Shruti, who's a design lead at OneCard with a master's degree in interaction from the University of Kansas. So please welcome Shruti Shah as well. Hey Shruti, nice to have you here. And finally, we have a Kiwi among us, Sherlene, or Sherry, as I would be calling her. Is a digital product designer at Rome Digital. She's also an MBA candidate. So from Auckland, New Zealand, please welcome our final panelist, Sherry Chan.
Hi, everyone.
Hey, ladies. So how are you all doing today? Are you good to go? Let's get started.
Yep, ready.
Great. So I think we have some very strong topics to explore and discuss, and we'll keep it dynamic and we'll keep it going. And I'm looking forward to hearing multiple perspectives. And there is, of course, going to be some questions from the audience. We'll pick that up as well as we go. And there's no sugarcoating it. So I said it the last time again. So let's just get in and see what we have in store for us. So the first, question I have is actually something small but still very critical, which I've observed and which I've read a lot about as well, which is the exclusionary mentality. And of course, this mentality comes with different things, but something as something when you're experiencing it in a work environment is usually to do with gender, if not other things. So how do you kind of build a team which doesn't encourage such kind of a mentality? I know it's probably nothing you do it on purpose. It might be something you do it as a small thing which you don't even realize. But how do you kind of create an environment where this sort of mentality is not accepted and you correct people as you go along? Maybe Shweta, you can start us off.
About I
Shweta,
haven't
I think we're having
experienced
some
it.
issues with your voice. So maybe we'll skip to Charlene and maybe you can try and check your mic once. Charlene?
Hi. Okay, so I think what I've observed at Head has worked pretty well is that a conscious dive into diversification of the team, not just in culture or race, but in terms of perspective. So when you're thinking about, sorry, I think Shweta's feedback is, yeah, sorry, can't hear myself. So yeah, diversification of not just culture and race, but also of perspectives, especially when you're thinking about scaling up the team and you're thinking about hiring. You should always hire for the potential for someone to culture add rather than just fitting in with the team. I think I'll let somebody else add on to that perspective. I don't want to hog the conversation.
Absolutely. Shruti, maybe you have something to add here?
I can add to that. I think exclusionary mentality is not just for women. I think it is prevalent across organization for a lot of people. And we've been hearing this quote a lot where that you need to earn the seat on the table, right? I think designers more so than ever need to prove themselves and make sure that you earn your right to be heard. So communication is a key in that. You need to make sure that you're communicating right. You're making valid points as to why you need to be heard, as to why you deserve a seat at the table, and why you should be included and not excluded in the org or in the whole process. Right? Involve yourself more in the business. Understand what the vision is. Try to contribute, and I think that solves a lot of the problem to begin with.
Yeah, 100%.
That's a great take. Absolutely.
I just wanted to quickly add to that. It's about building a global perspective for yourself, both intrinsically and intrinsically as an individual designer. You've got to try and build a holistic understanding as you're building your career and you're building perspectives as you grow throughout your years. This includes also not just a comprehensive appreciation of your cultural context, but also a genuine desire then to nurture your craft to adapt it.
Absolutely. Very true. Such some great perspectives. Shweta, maybe you want to jump in, but I still think there is some sort of a disturbance coming in from your side.
I did try.
Shweta, maybe you should try and rejoin once and check your internet because we're still kind of losing you here. Yeah. So maybe before she comes back, let's try and talk a little bit more about this. And as Shruti said, one of the types of the exclusionary mentality could be not giving the design team or the head of design a seat at the table, right? And that's something which I think a lot of organizations are adapting. But what do you guys think is the reason that it took so long and still not happening as much as we would want it to?
Personally, and this is also why I'm currently pursuing an MBA, I feel like although design has gotten more of a seat at the table, we as designers don't really know how to use that seat at the table effectively. So as a designer and as you grow along your journey, you should really be trying to expand your knowledge in business and aligning yourself with your customers' goals or your clients' goals or even your organization's goals so that you are individually able to align yourself with that goal and then able to, chart the goals of the design team to align with that as well.
Absolutely. I think I agree to this, where, designers need to learn how to add value to the team. And that happens when, you're more vocal, you're more communicative about how the design team is actually doing it. How is design and user research? And I think a lot of organizations still sort of shy away from doing research. And especially the fast-paced organizations that we see these days, right? They're like, they need output, 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 need to ship things and, do it fast. In that, I think somewhere we lose the value that design actually adds, and it's all about look and feel. I think as designers, we have a big responsibility to come in and say that no, it's not just look and feel, and we add more value. And I think that's where we can start.
Very true. I think those are some great perspectives, and probably I'll get back to Shweta now. Shweta, are you able to talk? Is it better now?
Yes, you tell me, is it better now?
Yes, it is better, finally. That's great. So I'll just fill you in quickly on what we've been talking about. So we spoke about exclusionary mentality in terms of gender, and Shruti and Shalin were pointing out on how the design team or the design department doesn't get a seat at the table when you're discussing something with your executives or the C-level guys. So your thoughts on that?
So I think there is a lot of awareness now that the designers need to have their say, and you need to have designers in a team, or in strategic decisions or discussions or meetings that are happening. The scenario is slowly changing, I would say. I think as leaders ourselves, we should propagate that culture of having perspectives from every different kind. So say it's a big kickoff meeting for a project. You definitely have like a tech lead, you have like a product manager. You should always also have a designer, and I think I do see that it's kind of happening. And we should totally take advantage of that and show what we do, how we do it, and it's just going to get better from there.
Amazing. I think we're all in agreement when it comes to this. I mean, of course, we're all designers, so I'm sure we'll agree. Maybe we should listen to some other perspectives from some non-designers, but nevertheless, we'll move on to the next sort of a topic we have on hiring women designers at senior level, right? And this is in tandem with what we just spoke about. And I think it is an established fact that not just in design, but in general, there are that in terms of women, there is a lack of representation at the C level or at the executive level. So what do you think is the reason that we're still lagging, and what are some of the ways that we can amp this up?
I think up until now, yes, the scenario was such that we do not see many women at that level. But I think the onus is on us as well, right? Instead of pointing fingers at large organizations, I think we as somebody who's been in the industry for a long time, we should strive to achieve that position. And I don't see anyone putting up any hurdles just because you're a woman or you're from a community that is not men. Let's talk about all the communities, not just women. I think that's going to change for sure.
I think many of the challenges that young designers, and then later in the careers, maybe more so for female designers face, is that they have a lack of confidence or belief in their ability, and that's that obviously time and experience helps that. But in when you're like further on your career, I think the one thing you can do is to get out of your own way, right? A lot of the time you have to just understand where the imposter syndrome or sense of disbelief in your own ability comes from, identify the intrinsic drive, and because we are often our own worst critics, and women more so than men in general. And I understand that also culture and context play a huge part in that. So most of us are Asians here, and that's a very deep-rooted thing that we face.
I think
absolutely.
Women in general, I think, need to be more confident, and that is, I think it's an innate sort of problem that we have. It could be a cultural thing. It could be, the environment, the society. But we're not loud like men are. We don't walk into the room and we don't announce ourselves. So I think that is something that women need to learn how to do. Someone talked, I think in the previous talk, someone talked about personal branding, right? I think it is very important as designers that we build our brand, we build the kind of work we're doing and showcase it to the world, be it men or women. Right? I think that will also help the recruiters or the organization hiring at a higher level. Give more perspective about the kind of work we're doing, and give them more context in terms of if it is a good match, if it is a good synergy. And totally agree with Shweta that a lot of organizations are moving away from the taboo of not hiring women leaders, as designers or any other uh, industry as well. And all of us here are living example of that. So I think we just need to strive and improve our work and make sure we do get that position that we are looking for.
Absolutely, I think we are in the right direction, at least from my knowledge and my research, in terms of a lot of representation there at the C level in terms of hiring more women. I think progressively we are doing that. I don't know if you're doing it at the right pace, but I think definitely it's a step in the right direction. One important thing I'd like to point out what Sherry just spoke about in the end. I think you spoke about hate crime towards Asians, and I think I just wanted. I mean, it's not in tandem with our conversation, but I think we should stress out that that is completely and absolutely not okay, and people who are trying to do that is absolutely disgraceful. So, if anybody out there, this probably is just something I wanted to bring out. Um, and one other point I think which I heard as a pattern across all your discussions were women being their own worst critics, or not being loud enough, or not being as loud as other men, right? So is that a deep rooted problem? Why is that even there? Or are we doing something wrong as an industry to not help not just women, anybody facing these kind of issues, help them out and try to give themselves an opportunity and a chance to improvise themselves and not be afraid.
I think
Sherry, go ahead.
I think that women are amazing at empathy, right? I mean, science has proven that we're slightly better at it than men. But I think in that same vein, we lean too much on personal connections to help to elevate us, and we don't feel like we can ask questions in public settings. So I think the advice there for me is, for women who are trying to climb up the ladder, don't be afraid to ask those stupid questions, and strive to find that optimal balance of comfort in the discomfort. Never let yourself be comfortable in not speaking up. And in the same vein, as senior leaders or leaders of teams, I think you need to ensure that you are more of a champion for your teams, whether they're female or male, varying in seniority, because people have great mentoring relationships, but being a mentor is no longer enough. You actually need to go out there and make things happen for your team. And that's one way forward.
I think beautifully summarized by Sherry already. But like to add to that, of course, women need to ask questions and make sure that they're being heard. What other people can do, and be it, other women leaders who are already at a leadership position, or men, they can allow and give the voice to younger female designers, or candidates who want to come up and I think as a society, or as an industry, it is frowned upon in some places that you can't make mistakes. I think you should allow people to make mistakes and learn from them, be supportive, give that structure and that platform that all of us need, and be more kind and empathetic towards our peers or colleagues. Make sure that we're all coming up together and being better designers, being better humans, than just trying to compete for that one position.
I would just like to add one point there to what Shruti said, right? It is seen as a pattern that women are little less confident about themselves, but I'm also trying to see the pattern that is evolving right now, like the freshers batch that has joined my organization last year, or a year before that, or this year. They are much more confident, that probably than what I was when back then when I joined the corporate world. And I'm just looking forward to the next 10 years and seeing what changes that's going to make.
So I think that is amazing, really, that how the younger generation is much more confident and expressive of their thoughts, right? So I think we'll just divert this conversation a little bit, but we'll be on the same lines in terms of hiring. So I've heard a couple of stories on, I don't, maybe not in the design industry, but in general, about managers, hiring managers asking women about their, uh, plan of having a baby or taking a maternity leave. I'm not sure if any of you are mothers here or if you face that yourself, but um, is it even a right question to ask? Isn't that something very natural, which probably happens with everybody out there? I mean, these days it's not just with mothers, it's with fathers as well. But uh, what, if you see some sort of a gap in your resume or some hiring manager asking you these kind of questions, what's your thoughts on that? Like, if you're in such position, how do you tackle it?
I'll take that first, probably. So fortunately, it wasn't so in my case when I interviewed, and I try to make sure that we don't ask these questions in our interviews when we are hiring. But it is very unfortunate to hear these, and there are stories on the internet, blogs written, and other friends of mine coming and saying that hey, yes, this question was being asked to me. I think that's really unfortunate. The only justifiable reason that I can see is when an HR is screening your resume, they look for gaps. They do look for if you have made a lot of switches. Just say for any any of the men, if they have like switched every 6 months or every 1 year, that raises a red flag. But in terms of women, if you see that there is like an employment gap, or she's taken a sabbatical or a break to start a family, or any other concern, men can also take a break, and I've seen them taking so for their families. I think what we should do is probe more on why did it happen, what was the intention, and what is the energy right now of that candidate to come back and start their career again. So I think we need to be more mindful of these little things, and evaluate appropriately.
Absolutely.
I think it's twofold for me, because I'm one who has jumped across a lot of jobs early in my career. But I did that to build a perspective, and then to be able to land on what I want to do in the future. And fortunately for me, and again, this is a cultural context thing, people are quite supportive of that here in New Zealand, and they understand that by doing that, you're actually forming a clearer understanding of what you want to do in the future, which is great. And as with response to the question about maternity, I think it is purely to do with the fact that legacy processes haven't been overturned, right? People have just not thought about it. So when interviewing as women, it's something that should be brought up. You shouldn't be afraid to bring it up. If you thinking about having a family in the future, just say, okay, what happens if I decide to have a child maybe a couple of months into the future? What are your maternity policies like? Because it's something that we should definitely normalize for future generations.
Totally.
I think New Zealand, in terms of policymakers or in terms of government, are also doing a great job at these things. Yeah, Shruti, you were saying something.
Yeah, I think totally on point, Sherry. I think women should ask questions about these things and not treat it as a taboo. And recruiters or organizations can also like deal with this in a bit sensitive manner. They don't have to go up front and ask the woman whether are you planning a family. Do you? I mean, I've been fortunate in my career where I haven't been asked such questions, but I do have a few friends who recruiters go to the extent to ask whether they how do you live, do you live with your in-laws, you know how dependent is your family on you. I think recruiters also need to understand that if you want to get a candidate on board, get that candidate on board based on their competence, based on their skills, based on the synergy, the culture fit, and not based on their family or their plans or I think it could be a question in general to make sure that their future goals and the candidate's future goal align, but it cannot be a make or break deal for hiring a candidate, which is an area where people can improve.
Absolutely. I think those are some great perspectives to look at that, and I hope companies follow more of these approaches to normalize these kind of things. So we're actually running a bit out of time, so I'll kind of switch gears and move into one last question, which I wanted to bring out and discuss, which is authentic marketing or superficial campaigns, right? We see a lot of companies. I mean, not just big companies, even brands or even products, right? Talking about how they empower women and how they support women and things like that. But in reality, things are completely different. And recently, I came across an article from an ex-Google employee who wrote her distress about how there was prevalent sexism in their company, and there was no way for her to reach out and correct the process because the process is broken. I'll maybe try and share that article later, but that was a very interesting read. So, when you are joining a company, how do you look at the company beyond for what they're advertising, not just in terms of their policy, in terms of a workplace and the way they work, but also some of the products they use and some of the product decisions they take. Like recently, Apple decided that Siri's voice is not going to be woman as default. It's going to be something you can choose. So, how do you look at company beyond what they're just selling in terms of being a product or being what they are as a company, as a workplace? Who wants to start that off? Maybe Sherry, please go ahead. Yeah.
Sure. I think it's as simple as when you go for an interview, or I mean, like if you're, you get to that stage, take a walk around the building, talk to a few women in the building and find out what their experience is like. See if the environment, if feels strangely quiet, then that something might be wrong with that. But before that, taking a step back, when you're looking into the products and services that the company has developed, especially if it's a consultancy, look at the clients that the company aligns themselves with and their principles, because I think that speaks more volumes than the company's promise itself.
True, that makes sense. Yeah.
I think
Shweta or Shruti, yeah.
Saying I totally agree with Shelly, and I would like to also go back to what Vaishali was saying in her talk about you evaluating the company that you want to join, right? And I think we go through this long process of interviews. There's like round 1, round 2. There could be some technical round and managerial, HR, and so on and so forth. And it's an experience for us, right? And what I've come to realize that a lot of candidates they do rate a company based on their own experience in the whole interview process. Like, do you feel really welcome in that company? What sort of empathy are the interviewers showing towards you? I mean, was that like really rude, or somebody was like really asking you questions, holding you at gunpoint, and making sure that they will get what they want out of you once you join the company. So I guess and I also think probably just sometimes go with your gut feel. Like I remember when I joined this organization, I never intended to join that. I was searching for jobs, and I just liked the way that I felt welcome in some of the interviews, and I think that was like a decision-making point for me.
I think Shweta and Sherry have already covered almost all the points. But yeah, definitely like go talk around with some employees, and you can find them easily on LinkedIn, right? Just go and ping them and ask them whether if this is a safe environment for a woman, or is it nurturing, empowering enough? And it's easy to gauge, right? And of course, if your intuition and your gut is right, most of the times it turns out to be in the right direction. a lot of companies, in fact, especially the upcoming companies, are really supporting women in leadership role or otherwise, and giving them the platform to excel and do good work. So I think that barrier is already breaking and change is already around the corner.
True. So I think most workplaces are evolving, especially with COVID and a lot of other things. Workplaces are becoming more than what they are, and there is a lot of proximity between employees themselves. But uh, let's take an example, maybe a company like Nike, right, which is very popular, and it's a great brand and it's known for so many things. And they took a stand recently with Kellen Kaepernick about taking a knee at their NFL games, and somebody like that who takes such a huge stand might not be just marketing to it, but there might be something more to it, right? And somebody like Nike also promotes heavily on somebody like Serena Williams, who's known to be somebody who's a great feminist and who supports a lot of these issues. So when you're looking at these companies with such great personalities, such great marketing campaigns, such great stories, and then you come back and you hear a story about some workplace sexism which has affected maybe one woman, that's enough to probably take a toll on that woman's life, right? So what do you make out of such a situation? It's a tough situation, but what are your thoughts on that?
I think Nike is a big organization, right? Where you have a lot of people, you have a lot of different sets of people from diverse backgrounds. You can't really gauge on that level whether tomorrow, say the leadership, someone in the leadership changes, right? They may come with a whole set of past experiences and biases toward a certain set of people or women or men or anything, right? And you can't really gauge from that. But I think as women, if we are facing active sexism in our organizations, I think one of the things that we can do is communicate, right? Make sure that you put it across, stand your ground, and make sure that it is heard that this is happening, and I am aware that this is happening, and I'm not okay with it. I think that helps a lot in driving the conversation and putting the point across that, and people do respond. A lot of people do respond. So I guess that's one thing that women can do.
Yeah, just to add to Shruti's. Oh, sorry, Shweta, go ahead.
Yeah, I think totally agree there. If you are facing something like this, and probably you'll not be able to gauge it at an organization level, but it probably is just happening in your team, and it could be unintentional. It could be something that somebody is just trying to be kind because you are a woman, and you feel that okay, that's detrimental to you. I think you need to, or us as women, we need to speak out. We need to figure out whether it's something that's really deep rooted in the organization culture, or it's just that one person who's being acting out of their values, or is it something that was really unintentional? That person really had some benevolent thoughts about you, and probably confronting that person, talking to them, making them feel comfortable about talking about these issues. I think that's really going to help us in a long way.
Just to add to that, again, at scale, it's quite hard to gauge, but on an individual team level, especially looking at the team that you're about to join, it's something that you really should try and figure out whether it's prevalent or not, because I think Kranti made a really, really good point in her talk, where she talked about an empathy deficit. And as we become more distant from each other, especially in a more phygital or digital world, we've got to be more aware of that, right? And building that self-awareness, understanding whether it's truly an external force or an internal or intrinsic kind of reaction to a situation that may actually not be invasive, then it's something that you have to build, because you build it and you then champion your team to be advocates for women, rather than taking it as something that's happening to you, because you can actually do something about it.
Correct. Great. I think that's all the time we have. I know we're getting into some very interesting points which we can further discuss, and something like sexism. I think we've all throughout the Women in Design WiDESIGN Fest, we've covered it extensively. But I still think there's a lot more to talk about on that. But thank you so much for being here. Really glad to have spoken to you all and gain some great perspectives from all of you. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you. Great. So I think we are nearing the end of the WiDESIGN Fest, so to speak. I think today's session was amazing with a great set of talks. Now I think as a standard practice, we've been kind of curating a couple of jobs for you to look at and posting them over here. So we're going to do that. Let me start by sharing my screen. Great. I think we have it on screen. So let's talk about the first job we have curated for you today. Yes, it's from Good Worker. I think 2 years experience, Bangalore, and I think you have a direct contact here. So if you're watching this, make sure to take a screenshot or take a good look at the email ID to which you can send across your resume and portfolio. So that's from Good Worker, location Bangalore. Let's have the next job. Great. So User Connect Consultancy is looking for user researchers, 3 to 5 years of experience in Hyderabad, and you can apply to Shipra at theuserconnect.com. So take note of that email. There are some skills also they're looking for, so make sure you take a note of that and make sure you are a decent fit before you write to them and send across your portfolio and resume. Okay, so next job comes from Pune, which is Synerzip, and they have 3 to 6 years of experience in user experience design. In addition, a strong knowledge of UX process and methodology. I think that's a given. A strong project and people management skills. Okay, so I think they might be looking for a lead position. It is, of course, a senior product design role. So check that out and do apply to their role if it interests you and if you think you're a right fit. Let's go to the next job posting, or is that okay? So I think that's all we've curated for you today. If you want to take a closer look at it, you can go to Yomo Design/jobs, where you'll find not just these but a lot more jobs which we have curated for you. So do check that out. And on a closing note, this program is brought to you by Yomo Design School. Excel your career in design. Do check out the amazing set of courses we have, which are going to start real soon, and also the workshop which I mentioned earlier. And I think we've had a great session with WiDESIGN Fest so far, and we're going to be back soon with a lot of more interesting stuff. So closely follow us on social media. There are so many ways you can interact with us, so many ways you can participate, a mentor, a volunteer, or a participant itself in many of our programs. So do check us out and do follow the newsletter as well at news.yomo.design, and we'll see you soon at our next program. Thank you.